about the impact, about everything that God achieved with Joshua.
Some level of personal assets or having money in their bank account. Okay, so what it means is that when you actually look at the Bible, especially, you have a leader who pursues early success. Nothing is showing.
Whenever God wants to transform someone, He introduces a vision. The goal of Moses' spiritual leadership is nation building.
Whenever we talk about poverty, especially in Africa, all over the world,
staying consistent. Be consistent.
We always equate it to someone having
about the impact, about everything that God achieved with Joshua.
Some level of personal assets or having money in their bank account. Okay, so what it means is that when you actually look at the Bible, especially, you have a leader who pursues early success.
Whenever God wants to transform someone, He introduces a vision. The goal of Moses' spiritual leadership is nation building.
Whenever we talk about poverty, especially in Africa, all over the world,
staying consistent. Be consistent.
We always equate it to someone having
about the impact, about everything that God achieved with Joshua.
Some level of personal assets or having money in their bank account. Okay, so what it means is that when you actually look at the Bible, especially, you have a leader who pursues early success.
Whenever God wants to transform someone, He introduces a vision. The goal of Moses' spiritual leadership is nation building.
Whenever we talk about poverty, especially in Africa, all over the world,
staying consistent. Be consistent.
We always equate it to someone having
about the impact, about everything that God achieved with Joshua.
Some level of personal assets or having money in their bank account. Okay, so what it means is that when you actually look at the Bible, especially, you have a leader who pursues early success.
Whenever God wants to transform someone, He introduces a vision. The goal of Moses' spiritual leadership is nation building.
Whenever we talk about poverty, especially in Africa, all over the world,
staying consistent. Be consistent.
We always equate it to someone having
about the impact, about everything that God achieved with Joshua.
Some level of personal assets or having money in their bank account. Okay, so what it means is that when you actually look at the Bible, especially, you have a leader who pursues early success.
Whenever God wants to transform someone, He introduces a vision. The goal of Moses' spiritual leadership is nation building.
Whenever we talk about poverty, especially in Africa, all over the world,
staying consistent. Be consistent.
We always equate it to someone having
about the impact, about everything that God achieved with Joshua.
Some level of personal assets or having money in their bank accounts. Okay, so what it means is that when you actually look at the Bible, especially you have a leader who pursues early success.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session tonight. Glad to have you guys today. Thank you. If you are joining us, please, I would like you to tell us where you are joining from. Okay. If you are joining online, thank you very much. Welcome, Maslina. Great intro. Love the creativity. Welcome. Great to have you guys here. Welcome, Godson. Great to have you guys. Please, if you are joining, kindly go to the chat and introduce yourself. Tell us where you are joining from. And this is also a good opportunity to invite someone to the conversation. So go ahead and share the link on your different platforms, or if you have specific friends you would like to invite to this conversation. This might be a good opportunity to reach out to them, to tell them that we are live. Okay. Joining from Nigeria, thank you, Godson. Thank you for being part of our conversation today. So let's go ahead and continue to share. Deborah joining from UK. Good evening, Deborah. Welcome. Let's go ahead. Maybe you invited someone for this conversation. This is a good time to, give them a quick reminder that we are live. It's going to be, a wonderful conversation, just like we have always had throughout this conversation, and even the previous conversations we've had before now. So I'm sure that there is someone in your life that needs to hear what we're about to discuss today. There is someone close to you. It might be a friend, it might be a family member. It might be someone in the same group, that you are sharing that needs to, be part of this conversation. So go ahead and extend the invitation. We'll be starting in the next 1 minute. Okay. So just use this last 1 minute to invite someone to the conversation. Okay. And then if you are just joining us now, please quickly go to the chat and introduce yourself. You can tell us your name. You can tell us where you are joining from. If this is your first time, you can as well tell us this is your first time, to this conversation. We'd like to hear from you. Thank you very much. We have Daniel here from Cross River State. Daniel, you are welcome. Thanks for joining. Go ahead and share this conversation. I can honestly tell you that you are going to be making someone's day if they are able to tune into today's conversation. Okay. We are going to go right into it. Remember, while the conversation is going on, you can use the chat to, post a question or something, a key point, that you got from the lesson and you would want to share with others. Just, go ahead and paste it in the chat. And then before the end of the conversation, we'll be able to answer those questions. Okay. So we are continuing our conversation on how to build your dream and avoid failure. Okay. Someone, I think when I posted it on my chat, and someone was asking whether it's possible to build your dream and then avoid failure. And, of course, she felt like she doesn't really, know before now that it's possible to avoid failure. Okay. Um, um, Dream, when we talk about dream, we are talking about something you want to, truly live your life for. In the process of doing that, there can be momentary failures, okay? But your dream, that picture you have in your heart, that destination you want to go to as an individual, or the organization you want to build, it is possible for it to be built without failure. Okay. So there can be successive failures in between when you are trying to build your dream. Okay. That is natural. That happens to everyone. Okay. Sometimes in the process of building your dream, you might discover that you fail different times on your journey to building your dream, but it is still possible to build a dream and it will succeed, and your dream itself will not be a failure. Okay. And that is the context that we are sharing this conversation today, that it is possible for you to dream. It is possible for you to, think of a future that you would want to be a part of and see it come to pass. Okay. Interestingly, what I'm going to be, talking with us, discussing with us today is about fear. Okay. Um, while reflecting over this teaching, I was, asking myself at the start of any project I've done, at the start of any endeavor, at the start of anything I have tried to do in life, what is the most common hindrances that I have come to overcome? Okay. So I've thought about different things, getting the right team, financing, building my capacity, developing clarity of purpose, being sure that this is what I really want to do. But somehow I've come to realize that in between all this is the issue of fear. Okay. And having interaction with people, having conversations with people before now, it is easy to understand that fear is something that applies to all humans. Fear is something that is connected to us in a way that most times it can be the single reason why we never start anything, why we never finish, or why we never complete any project that we've started. Okay. And today I would like us to look at the subject of fear. Hopefully I will come to that subject from an entirely different understanding of what fear has been, or what fear has come to be the general understanding before now. Okay. So some of the teachings I share with you guys is drawn from my own personal experience, and of course the experience of others. And what I try to do is to ask myself, okay, when I had this experience, how did I process it? What did it do to me, and how can it apply to somebody else, or how can someone apply that experience in their own life? And one thing I found very interesting in teaching this topic is that the concept of fear, the way I dealt with it over years, that helped me to accomplish some of the things. To many other people, it might not be a great fit, but for me, something that I set out to do, not believing that it was ever possible for me to do it. And I end up, accomplishing it. And when I look at the different stages of my life, I've come to realize that there's always that big mountain of fear that I have to climb and overcome to get anything done in my life. Okay. We live in a world of a lot of uncertainties. We live in a world where people are struggling to find their uniqueness, where people are, trying to find their authenticity. And for me, why I find this topic very important is that you can't really find your true self until you start living your dream. Okay, someone said you are either living your dream or you are living someone else's dream. But to find your real self, to find your uniqueness, to find your authenticity, I believe that the path to discovering that is you understanding your dream, building your dream, and succeeding in your dream. I also believe that it is one thing that will give you fulfillment in life. Okay, irrespective of what you have been able to acquire in life, irrespective of what you've been able to do, the single component that makes life meaningful and fulfilling is the fact that we have been able to build a dream, build a life that we truly want to build, not building or living somebody else's life, but doing something that is truly meaningful and powerful to us. And that is why this conversation we are sharing, I believe, is very, very important to you. Okay? Today we are going to be, looking at fear, from a different perspective. Uh, 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 Universally, okay, fear is something that is known to man. In fact, I was checking, what are the greatest fear that humans face, and one of them was the fear of death. The second one was the fear of rejection or fear of abandonment, and of course, the third one is the fear of failure. Okay, so you see, the fear of failure made the list. Okay, so if you are building a dream, if you are building something that is bigger than you, if you are launching into life to do something that is going to be, an extraordinary feat for you, I believe that one of the things that you would have to overcome is fear. You will have to deal with fear. Okay? And today I am hoping to, help you do justice to that. Okay? Of course, why fear happens to human has been documented vastly. One of them is there are biological, reasons, survival instinct. So if you want to do something and your instinct, is trying to, preserve, you from danger or from harm, what happens is that that fear element kicks in. So it's not always something negative. Okay, it's there to also prepare your heart to see that what you're about to encounter, what you're about to get yourself involved in, can possibly lead to harm or danger. Okay, but there are other things that have been also vastly documented that causes fear in humans. One of them are also rooted in psychological imagination, your memory, the way you process. I know when we started this conversation, we dealt with a lot in terms of your mode, okay? How you think, how you process, how you interpret your experiences. Okay, psychologically, when projecting your future or recalling your past, there is something that often comes into your heart, when you remember past experiences or you imagine negative outcomes. The psychological effect of that is that you feel something that you call fear. Okay. Being spiritual people, we also understand that there is a spiritual dimension to that. Okay. The Bible said that perfect love casts away fear. Okay. The Bible has consistently described fear as a spirit. Okay. Meaning that there is a spiritual component where someone can experience fear as a form of spiritual attack from a spiritual dimension. Okay. We have also noticed that there are social or cultural influences. Okay, the way you were raised. Sometimes there are things that you have been restricted from. There are some things that you have been taught. There are some experiences that you've had, within your culture or within the family upbringing that have over the years created, that fear, okay, within you. Peer pressure, experiences as a child or growing up as a young adult. All those things can, go away to influence, fear, within you. And like I said, the purpose of fear is not always bad. Okay? So sometimes it can be a signal to warn you. And sometimes, maybe when God is speaking to you about something, fear can, come to, be some form of signal. The goal is to check it to know exactly where the fear is coming from, what it is doing to you, or what is stopping you from doing. It can help you to, gain clarity on the next direction to take. Okay, so this is just giving us some basic foundation around the issue of fear. But when connecting fear to your dream is where I find very, very interesting. Let me give you a dictionary meaning of fear. It says an unpleasant emotion caused by the threat of pain, danger, or harm. Okay, so first he said it's an unpleasant emotion caused by the threat of danger, pain, or harm. So one thing that was going on in my mind is, why will I be looking at my dream? Why will I be looking at what I want to be? And what I am feeling is fear. And this fear of failure is one of the most common fear for humans. Okay, you are facing your dream. To me, I believe we should face our dream with some certain level of excitement. We should face our dream with some level of joy, knowing that, okay, I want to be this, I want to do this, I want to accomplish this, and then here is an opportunity for me to do that. It should be some form of excitement. But why does fear come in? Okay, it now made me to redefine fear specifically for myself and for anybody who is also listening to this teaching. Okay, and the way I have been able to redefine fear is that fear is simply a response, okay, to the imagination or the picture that you have in your head. Okay, so fear is simply a response. The same way you would have happiness as a response, the same way you will have enjoyment or excitement as a response. Fear is also a response to a picture that you have in your mind. Okay, so it means that when I approach my dream, when I approach any vision, any goal that I'm trying to build, and I am experiencing fear, one of the things that experience should tell you is the fact that I am feeling what I am feeling as a result of my imagination. Growing up, when I say that I am not a very outspoken or outgoing person, someone you would say that has maybe a melancholy or phlegmatic kind of temperament, people will not always, believe it. I understand. Maybe over the years I've come to overcome it. But I think that one of the things that happened to me in the early days of, speaking before people, speaking before crowd, being outside there and having meaningful conversations is the fact that I've over time come to redefine fear, to understand, to see it differently, and it makes me to approach life differently. So most times it's not like I don't feel fear, or it's not like I appear as a very courageous person, but it's simply because my mind has been able to interpret fear differently. One of my early days of doing this was when I've been called to speak in front of people. Okay, so usually I will be very, very, very afraid. I think it still happened to me up till now. Okay, my heart will be panting. My hands will start sweating, and I will just feel this uneasiness, this discomfort. But sometimes when I start talking, two things happen to me when I start talking. It looked like I become better. Okay, so the fidgeting stops. Okay, the heat sensor stop, the shivering stop, and somehow I'm raptured in the conversation that I'm having. And then the response from the audience, when it becomes positive, I just see that all of a sudden, the fear dispels in my heart. Okay, and two things real. And sometimes when I'm finished my conversation, I will ask if a friend was there. I will tell the friend, you see, when I went up to the stage, I was fidgeting, I was shaking, I'm not sure. And the person will tell me, no, I didn't, you were doing all right. And sometimes it's a pure honest feedback, not that they were trying to encourage me. They were like, no, we didn't see anything like that. You were shaky, you were feeling shaky. We didn't see you. You had confidence, you were doing well. So it gave me two responses. First was that when I want to speak, I often have an imagination. What is that imagination in my head? How will people receive this? Okay? Am I going to do well? Okay, will I speak something good? Will I make meaning? Will I add value? Now, because I have that pressure going on in my head, not necessarily what I want to teach or the impact I'm trying to make, because I have these negative pictures in my head, negative pictures in my mind, what happens is that it starts giving me that unpleasant emotion that we call fear. And most times, it's one thing that deters people from taking massive actions in their life. Okay. The second thing it taught me is that whatever I am feeling, the people in the audience were actually not noticing it. They weren't seeing it. So it means that whatever I was feeling, whatever I was dealing with, is something that was happening to me as an individual. My environment was not perceiving it. Okay. So what happened was that over time, as I climbed the stage to speak, I remind myself that whatever I'm feeling is within me, and the people in the audience are not feeling that. And the second thing is that I try to occupy my mind with what I want to do and the impact it's going to make in people. And over time, I realize that I'm able to face the public and then interact with the public. Now, like I said, it happens to me now. Okay, when I say this, that each time I'm supposed to speak, I have that uneasiness. People will say, you have been speaking all your life. Yes, me. It happens to me. So the goal is not necessarily to eliminate fear in your life. Okay, I want you to listen to this. I'm not saying that I want to give you a magic wand that eliminates fear completely in your life. I want you to change your response to fear, change the picture you have in your mind that creates that response of fear within you so that you can be able to move ahead and achieve your goals. Okay, so each time I need to stand in front of the public, I will still have to remind myself they can't see what I'm feeling. Focus on what you want to do. I remember when one of my mentors, I will often accompany him to radio stations, accompany him to teachings, and he will tell me, no, so you need to be on radio. People need to hear you speak. I will laugh and say, no, this is you. Just do your thing. It's not me. I don't think I can ever talk on radio. You won't believe how struggle it was for me to get on YouTube. Some of my friends had to convince me and said, no, have these conversations, be free. And those things will kick in. But when it kicks in, what happens is that I will come and then ask myself, okay, so what am I feeling? Okay, what is it doing to me? Is that the right kind of feeling I'm supposed to do? What picture is producing that feeling? The moment you begin to change that picture, what happens is that you feel more empowered, you feel more energized, to embrace your dream. Okay, so it's an unpleasant fear caused by a threat. What threat? Is the threat that you are perceiving. Okay. One thing that science has been able to do for us is that the brain neural signals perceives your imagination as something real. Okay. So scientists have been able to prove to us that when you look at a physical object and when you imagine a physical object, your brain interprets it the same way. Okay, so that means that what I am imagining, my brain sees it. So if I begin to imagine a lion, okay, coming into the house, attacking everybody, as I'm doing that, my brain begins to think that I am actually physically seeing a lion. And what happens is that the emotion kicks in for survival, for preservation. It's like walking in the house and all of a sudden you start imagining that there's a ghost. Okay, what happens is that in your mind, you are imagining that there is a ghost, but your brain is interpreting it that you are actually seeing someone. And most times, if you are not careful, if you look seriously, you will actually think that there was someone there because your brain can't tell the difference. And that is why this is very, very important. How you imagine your dream, how you think about your life and your future goes a long way in shaping how you respond to it. And how you respond to it will go a way to determine whether your dream is going to be a reality or not. Okay? So it is by changing that imagination, that picture that you have in your head, you understanding that fear is not based on your reality. It is based on your imagination, what could go wrong. Okay? And it is that imagination of what could go wrong that keeps your heart feeling pain, feeling fear, feeling danger, because you are always thinking about what could go wrong. Okay, if I start this, what if people don't receive it? What if people don't like it? What if it doesn't go well? Okay, you want to create an event. What if I do this event and nobody shows up? Okay, what if I do this and that happens? The moment you keep imagining those negative stuff in your head, what happens is that it creates fear in you. Something happens I think 2 days ago, I took some action that was very positive. And when I was relating it with a friend who knew about that action, and then what happened is that he started painting another picture of what could go wrong because of that action. And I realized that the moment he was talking, I started sensing fear. All of a sudden, I started feeling, oh, maybe that decision I took was wrong. What I tried to, do, which I felt was the best, of great intention, but look at where it was spiraling into. I had to put a stop. Okay. The moment I started having that feeling, I had to put a stop. Okay. I had to recreate the picture. I had to redefine my intentions. I had to redefine the objectives I'm hoping to get from that. And I realized that he kept quiet. Okay. And then all of a sudden, that picture also changed in my heart. Okay. And what happens is that the feeling relapsed. And what also happens is that I felt more energetic to continue to move in that direction. So you see that most times what you hear from people, okay, creates a picture in your mind. What you read, the news you listen to, the environment, the activities around you can give you pictures in your mind that your soul interprets in a negative way. And what happens is that it can stop you from achieving your dream. Okay. So what are the different kinds of failure, the nature of failure that could affect someone? Like I said, fear is not always external. I don't want you to look at fear as something external. I want you to look at fear as something very internal, that is a response to the picture in your imagination. Okay. That's the explanation I would want you to go home with today. That this is a picture in my head bringing that emotion within me. Okay. So even if you want to do an event and you are afraid that people might not show up, okay, would you rather sit and fear that people will not show up? Or would you rather go to your invite list, look at your mobilization list, look at the activities surrounding there and take action towards accomplishing the results, not to recluse into fear and telling yourself that you are going to fail? Okay. So one of the things you need to understand about the type of fear that cripple people in terms of the fear of failure is your mind is occupied with what if I try and it doesn't work? What if I try and it doesn't work? Another thing that is connected to it is that fear of rejection. What will people think of me? What will people say? How will people perceive this? How will people understand this? What will be people's response to me? Okay, so when we are occupying our mind with negative stuff, so there is nothing wrong about thinking how people will receive it. But why not replace your mind with positivity? Why not, instead of thinking something negative about how people will receive it, why not think something positive about how people will receive it? Okay, so you have an event, instead of thinking nobody will show up, why not use that the same imaginative efforts to imagine that people are going to show up, that the hall is going to be filled? Okay, instead of thinking that people might not find this as something very interesting or they might not want to be part of it, why not just begin to imagine that, oh, everybody was coming in, oh, everybody had some excitement, there was much to learn, there was a lot of things. It is the same imagination, okay? But what happens is that you are not using your imagination rightly. You are rather using it for something negative instead of something positive, okay? So each time you think about your dream, what I want you to ask yourself is, am I always and constantly imagining negative things about my dream? Or am I constantly imagining positive things about my dream? Okay? Am I worried about people in a wrong way? Or am I excited in a positive way that this is the response I'm going to get from people? Okay? Another one that I've also seen that is related to this is the fear of inadequacy, where you feel that, oh, maybe I don't have what it takes or I am not enough to build this dream. Oh, beautiful. Okay, you are not enough. Why do you think you are not enough? You don't have the knowledge. Then why not go for the knowledge? It's a better use of your imagination. Why not go for the things? Why not use your imagination, to focus on the things that you need for your dream rather than the fear that you are not adequate in terms of what it takes to achieve your dream. So the right understanding I want you to get today is that it is your imagination that is pulling all the string. It is the way you picture whatever is in front of you is what is pulling the string. And most times it can go a long way to cripple you that you take an action that lead you to negativity. Okay, I'm in a community, where we lost a friend this week. I think the event happened yesterday, and of course there have been a lot of stories around it. But one major theme that is coming out was that, there was an armed robbery attack, and because of things that were happening in other flats, she was gripped by fear and she took an action. And that action led her to death while trying to avoid death. Okay, so you see that, for instance, we push ourselves into action as a result of what we feel, not necessarily what is happening to us. Because what happens is that your imagination, like I said, sees your brain interprets your imagination as it's happening already to you. So whatever you are imagining, your brain is seeing it that is happening to you immediately. It interprets it as something physical. And what happens is that you start taking action in line with that imagination, which might not be true in the first place. Okay, so you have seen people, they will sit down, their mind will begin to go. Sometimes you imagine what people will be thinking, you imagine people's action, you imagine people's intentions, you imagine a lot of things that might not necessarily be true. And the more you think about it, the more your brain takes it as a reality and reinforces that emotion. And if you're not intentional in letting go of that emotion, it pushes you to make choices that might not be favorable towards your dream, that might not be favorable towards the life that you want to build. And that is why I find this very, very important, not just in building your dream, but in living your best life, living the life that you want to live. Like I said, almost every project I've done, almost everything I've been able to achieve as an individual, one key factor that I have had to fight with is the aspect of fear. And I will sit down and continue to do it, continue to check it. And I've realized that you can't even imagine what you are able to deal with if you can deal with fear. You can't even begin to imagine what you can be able to accomplish if you can be able to deal with fear. And most times as a leader, when I work with people and I'm having a conversation with someone, and once I begin to sense fear, that is the more reason why you have to handle that responsibility. Because I'm helping people to understand that once your mind is moving you to that direction, you have to retrain, bring your mind from that direction, and be positive about your expectations, be positive about your actions, and be positive about the things that you want to do. Okay? One of the big takeaways I want to give to you guys as I summarize is dreams don't die because they are impossible. Okay? They die because fear keeps people from trying. Okay? Dreams don't die because they are impossible. They die because fear keeps people from trying. Okay? So you are not even giving it your best. You have not even given it your time. You have not even given it your energy. You have not even been consistent with it because the fear keeps telling you that you are not good enough, that something might go wrong when you get involved. And that is what keeps people from launching into their dream and then achieving their dream. One of the things we saw in the Bible, in the book of Job 3 verse 25, is where Job said that what I feared has come upon me. What I dreaded has happened to me. Like I said, the moment your brain begins to interpret your imagination as real, one other thing it does to you is that it begins to draw that experience. It begins to draw that imagination, making it your reality. So all of a sudden what happens is that if you're imagining something negative about a relationship, something about to go wrong in a relationship, or interpreting someone's action in a relationship, what happens is that all of a sudden it looks like what you are imagining. And sometimes we become a prophet of our own doom. Sometimes we begin to say, I knew it, I saw it coming. Have you seen people say things like that? He said, I knew it. I saw it coming. I know she's going to do that. I know she's going to take that action. I know he's going to do that. I know he's going to do that. What happens is that as you continue to imagine that outcome, it goes a way of starting to replicate such situation in your life. And Job was saying, what I have feared has come upon me. What I have feared, what I have dreaded has come upon me. You remember the story of the 10 spies in the Bible in Numbers 13:33. They said that they felt like grasshoppers. You see, their reality was distorted. First, how can a human being see themselves as grasshopper? Of course, I know you are standing before a giant, but why would you compare yourself in front of the giant as a grasshopper? And what happened was that even while retelling the story, see the power of fear. Even while retelling the story to the congregation of the Israelites, the Bible said that the people were gripped with fear and they began to speak against Moses. You brought us to the wilderness to die. Why are they talking about that? You can see how fear travels. Why are they suddenly talking about that? Because they were imagining that. Okay, so they were already imagining, okay, these guys brought a testimony. They said we are like grasshoppers before the giants. And many of them have started imagining themselves flying like a grasshopper, and the giants will just hit their hand and they will die. And you see, they're already imagining death by knife, by different kinds of things. And they were screaming, you brought us here to die. And guess what? Many of them died, except Joshua and Caleb, who had the right picture that helped them to experience the blessings of God, or to experience the dream in their hearts. Okay, so you see that it is a distortion of your reality. Why are we calling it a distortion of your reality? Because the moment you start imagining that negativity, you open that door to manifest, to make that a reality, which was not even in existence. You bring it into existence and it becomes your reality. Okay, so one of the ways I believe that I think I was speaking to a great politician that I greatly respect. I had a moment with him one night, and I had an opportunity to ask questions, okay, while we were having conversations. And one of the things I asked him is, how are you able to achieve all these things that you are doing? How are you able to do it? And the only thing I can never forget, this conversation probably happened, not to exaggerate, but nothing less than 15 years ago. Okay? And you can see I can't forget that conversation. I can't even forget how he demonstrated it, because he actually demonstrated it. He told me he used the TV as an example. He said, if there is something on top of that TV, okay, that what he will first of all do is to sit where he is and then begin to imagine that thing. He will imagine it so strongly, so powerfully, and coordinate himself on how to go and take whatever object that he has seen on that TV, and he will weigh his environment to check obstacles, to check his speed, and then he will convince himself that nothing can be able to stop him, and then he goes for it. And while we were talking about it, he actually stood up, went to the TV, he was demonstrating. He was trying to tell me that it is first of all a fight in his imagination to believe that it is possible before venturing into it. The Bible was trying to describe Abraham. The Bible said that he believed, he hoped against hope. Okay, what does it mean? It was that physically there was nothing for Abraham to hope in, but he had hope. Okay, so it's like being in a negative situation, but you were imagining something positive. Your dream is supposed to be positive, but you see people imagining something negative connected to their dream. But what the scripture was telling us was that Abraham found himself in a negative situation, but he was able to turn that negative situation around because he focused his mind on building something positive out of it. What it tells me is that even if your dream doesn't have a potential for success, when you imagine the positive and the right things around your vision, what happens is that it will make it to come to pass. You find yourself in a relationship, you find yourself in a relationship with people, at workplace, anywhere you find yourself. If you begin to imagine, I was discussing with one of my leaders. He was complaining bitterly about his team, that his team is this, his team is that. And I was telling him that there's even something wrong in the way you imagine your people. Okay? Why I don't think that they are the best in their behavior, I am more worried about the picture in your head concerning the people that you are leading. Because as a leader, you have to believe in their best. You have to hope for the best outcome. You have to hope, yeah, situations can happen. Do I get worried or sometimes uncomfortable about maybe certain actions of people within my team? It does happen to me, okay? But what happens is that when I go into my moment, into my quiet place, and I reflect over that action, usually I come out better. Because one of the things I do in my reflection is to actively change my picture. I began to see the person differently. I began to see the person's action differently. I began to change. Most times, as I begin to do that, I begin to see things differently. I begin to understand differently. I begin to have more empathy. Most times, I'm able to take myself out of that situation to understand why the person is acting the way that they are acting. And usually, it's a way that helps me to build something better. And I was explaining to the person, I said, you have a wrong imagination about your people. You have a wrong imagination about your circumstances. One of the things that propels me to talk about leadership, to talk about Africa, to talk about Nigeria the way I talk about it, is that I have a beautiful imagination about my country. I have a beautiful imagination about Africa. Sometimes the imaginations are so real. When I tell people that I don't think it's going to take us more than 10 years to change Nigeria, if we ever have an opportunity to do that, they'll be wondering, do you know what you're talking about? It's because probably I am so raptured in the things I want to accomplish, in the possibilities of things I want to accomplish, and how fast I believe it is going to travel in that accomplishment, that it makes me to know and understand that it is possible. For every area of your life, what is your imaginative response to that? Okay, so how do you transform your fear into faith? One of them is replace your negative visualization with faith-based visualization. Like Abraham, even if the situation is negative, can you make something positive out of it? Change that visualization. Like I said, fear is only a response to the negative visualizations that you have in your heart. Okay? So instead of seeing yourself failing, picture yourself succeeding. Okay? Instead of imagining rejection, imagine acceptance and growth. Imagine love. Imagine a beautiful experience. Think of something positive coming out of that. And what happens is that what? You have the power to change it and make it so. Okay? One of the things I have used that I will also encourage you to do, is have specific affirmations. Okay? That is rooted in truth. Okay, so what I mean by have specific affirmations is whenever you sense something, especially a type of fear that especially if it's connected to something you want to do, what you will discover is that they will be repetitive. Each time you think about that situation, fear comes in. Each time you think about that situation, fear comes in. Find words that you can speak in your heart that is opposite or a replacement of what you are feeling. Okay? So if you are feeling rejection, can you tell yourself that you are loved? Can you tell yourself that you are accepted? If you are feeling a negative surge to put yourself into negative actions, can you speak something positive? Can you stay positive in your actions and in your conversation? I've often realized that the more you converse with yourself, the more effective you will become in changing your picture and your mindset concerning that current situation. Okay? And then I will encourage you to take bold actions. Okay? No matter how small it is, take steps towards what you want to do. take steps towards what you want to do. I've often realized that if I'm approaching a dream, if I'm approaching a vision, and that fear comes in, and I begin to take steps. As I begin to take steps, what happens is that it begins to open up. It begins to be a reality. And all of a sudden, you now begin to see, this is possible. Maybe we can do this. Maybe we can achieve this. Because you did not stop yourself from taking small steps. I would even say it in a different way. Learn to take the first steps. Learn to take the first steps. Imagine pushing a vehicle that is stationary in one place. It will take enough strength. You are going to exert enough muscle to push that vehicle. But once it catches and there is momentum and it begins to flow in motion, what happens is that it becomes less easier. Okay? It becomes more enjoyable when it is flowing. And usually I want you to follow your dreams like that. See it as something that will build into momentum over time. Okay, so there are people who have over time overcome their fear, and if they can, you can. If I can, you can. Okay, one of the things I want to say before we close this conversation is that fear has a cost. Okay. Like I mentioned Job, like I mentioned the children of Israelites, fear has a cost. Fear is going to cost you something. One of the things I can tell you that is going to cost you is that it's going to cost you delay in your destiny. Okay? Fear is going to cost you delay in your destiny. Because the time you are wasting oscillating in one place, checking, should I do this, should I do that, should I venture into this, should I venture into that, that time that you are wasting doing that, what happens is that it's going to add, a great level of delay in your life. I remember when I ran for SUG president, okay, that's one of the biggest fear I've had to, ever overcome in my life. This is an election you have to run when you are in your fourth year, going to your final year. I came out in my third year. I was the youngest, okay? And I was inspired by God to go out, and I declared to run for the election 2 months to the election. Okay, the election was supposed to be in November, and I declared to run, I think, in September. When I declared to run, I think I was the 13th candidate. You see these massive, huge guys running for election, and there's this small young boy. When I look at my pictures of those days, I just smile, And what was going on in my mind, after dealing and overcoming my fear, I stepped out. I started reaching out to people. I think the first thing I did was to send SMS. I'm Nonson Namani. I'm running for ACG president. It has been my tagline all my life. Whether I'm running for House of Assembly or House of Rep, I'm Nonson Namani. I'm running for House of Rep. And once I take that first step, make that first commitment, what happens? It begins to travel. How did I know that the event was not even going to hold in November? And what if I refused to make that decision? So what happened was that, a very bad incident happened, that led to someone even losing their life, before the election in November, and then they suspended the election. When the election was suspended to the next year, so see what happened. All the people who were in their fourth year moved to their final year, automatically they were disqualified. Okay, and I moved from my third year to my fourth year, the only qualified candidate. It has never happened in the history of that school where I became the only unopposed candidate going for that office. Of course, some other people had to come together, to say, okay, no, we must challenge this guy. But remember, I came out since last year. I've been working since last year. So by the time they were joining, I've already gone far. What if I allow the fear that it was already close to time, that I don't have a chance, that I don't have a choice? It would have crippled me from achieving my destiny. And many of you, there are things that come into your heart that you need to pursue. They are dreams, but you are always constantly checking. Okay, what if it doesn't work? Am I sure it's the right time? One of the most powerful statements I had from Bill Winston, which, I have a strong, paternal feeling with Bill Winston each time I listen to him. He said that the time is right when you are right. Okay? He said the time is right when you are right. So one key to decipher timing is to ask yourself in your heart, in your imagination, am I ready for that? If you're ready for that, then that is the right time. Okay, so the delay oftentimes is not caused by God's timing for your life. Listen to this, is powerful. Delay is not necessarily as a result of God's timing. Delay is as a result of your unreadiness towards the things you want to accomplish. Okay, so sometimes we want to spiritualize timing. Say, okay, maybe it's not timing. Okay, maybe that time is the timing. No, most times it has to do with your readiness. Am I saying that there's nothing like divine timing? No, I'm not saying there's nothing like divine timing. I've experienced divine timing. I've shared stories about divine timing here. I'm a strong believer of divine timing. But most often times, you have to check, is it fear that I'm worried about, or is it really divine timing? If it's fear, then ask yourself, am I right? When you are right, the time is right. Okay? So fear attracts regrets. So you are going to look back and you are going to ask yourself, why didn't I make that choice? Why didn't I make that call? Why didn't I say sorry? Why didn't I, take the action when I was supposed to take action? Why did I stop myself from doing what I'm supposed to do? Okay? And then you are going to be regretting it. So most times, why fear might masquerade as safety. Okay? So because you are afraid, you want to take action that you interpret as safety. I want you to also to understand that what you call safety might become a regret for you in the future. Okay? The graveyard is the richest place on earth because of unused dreams. The first time I heard that quote, it was from Miles Monroe. He said that the richest place on earth is the graveyard, because there, inside those graves, are buried people's dreams, books that we are not written, songs that we are not written, music that nobody had opportunity to watch while they are being performed, movies that we are never done, houses, technology, ideas, things that never came to pass, not because that they can't, but because the people who had those dreams were crippled with fear and they left this earth without giving the world their best. Okay? So, as I conclude this is what I want you to do. Remember that fear is a liar, courage is a choice. Okay? And the question I want you to, ponder as we bring this conversation to end is, what fear is holding your dream hostage? What fear? Is it the fear of resources? Is it the fear of people? Is it the fear of inadequacy? Is it the fear of acceptance? You need to be able to define it. Okay, what exactly am I afraid of? Okay, and then take one bold step this week. Don't postpone it. This week towards your dream despite your fear. Let me share one last example. Okay, we have been suddenly, I think I shared something like that a few months ago. When I woke up in the morning, I was meditating. I heard so strongly in my spirit, it is time. Okay, one of the things that came so strongly in my heart, it is time for, is the need to expand what I'm doing in terms of my organization, especially outside Nigeria. Okay, and then I had few people I noted down I needed to talk to. But for some reasons, being busy, a lot of things happening, I was not able to, make that call. Strangely, few days ago, I had to call one of the people that I've been saying so that I'm going to talk to. And then when I started speaking to him, he was so excited about the conversation. He said, come on, this is what I want to hear. I've been trying to talk to people about this. He said, please, we need to do something. While there we are talking, he has already mentioned. He said, I have somebody in America, we need to talk to this. Let's have a meeting. He said, I have somebody from Zimbabwe. There's this Nigerian guy in Manchester. Let's have a meeting. Let's discuss and let's take off. All of a sudden, he's already bringing ideas. And I was asking him, so he said, no, so you must pilot this. Okay, you must live this. You must drive this. Okay? And already it looks like things are connecting together. Just because I took a step. What was the step? I made a call. Sometimes what you are thinking in your head, imagining how would this happen, how would it happen, how would that happen, sometimes is when you take a step connecting you to a relationship that opens you to the people who are going to supply the things that you are cracking your head of doing. Okay? Don't let fear limit you. Launch into your dream and live your best life. Okay? I'm going to say that quote again, the takeaway quote I wanted to give you guys as a takeaway quote for today's conversation is: dreams don't die because they are impossible. They die because fear keeps people from trying. And one of the things I also remembered now, I was hoping to share in this conversation. I'm sorry, I know I'm remembering a lot of things, but I promise you this should be the last. Okay? Is that the moment you deal with fear, you will be also shocked how fear reduces in your life. The moment you deal with the fear of death, I'm not sure if I said that correctly. The moment you deal with the fear of death, you will be shocked how other fears, their influence and their impact in your life reduces. Because the foundation of this, the key foundation of this is the fact that we want self-preservation. We don't want to die. We don't want self-harm. But the moment you are able to deal with the fear of death, the moment you actually die, so how to deal with fear of death for me is to actually die. Okay? So most times when I venture into things, I even ask myself, what's the worst thing that can happen to me? And I say, okay, I can die. Okay? And then if I die, then what happens? Okay? And once I have that figured out in my head, I launch out and I start doing what I'm doing. Okay? And the moment you deal with that, you will see how powerful you become. You will see how energized you become. You will see how strong and how bold you become. I believe that's why the scripture said, "Oh death, where is thy sting?" The sting of death is not necessarily the fact that death happens. I think that the most powerful sting of death is fear. Because it stops you. You want to preserve yourself. You want to preserve your life. It stops you from moving forward, from moving ahead. Let me know in the comments box how this conversation has helped you. If you have a question, this might be a good opportunity to drop your question in the chat box, and then we can see how we can respond to that. If you are not able to do that now, you can still drop it and then we'll respond to it later. Okay? Thank you, Joy, for joining from Enugu. Daniel said, I can relate to this. Thank you so much, Daniel. And thanks to everyone who joined us today. Okay. Remember, our e-course is still on. I want to use this opportunity to, speak to you guys about the need, to register for our e-course. Transformers Global is not just a weekly conversation that happens every Tuesday. We have an e-course which is free for you to register and free for you to be part of. If you have an inquiry, we also have a contact line that can help you, know more about the 5-week, practical course that is going to change your life. It's going to make a significant impact in your life. I am yet to see anybody I have this conversation with whose dream is not awakened, whose passion is not awakened, whose desire to make a difference is not awakened. One of the things I want to do, one of the things I want to be able to do in life is that when I cross someone's life, I should be able to awaken their dream. I must be able to bring them alive. Okay? And it's because I know what it means to live without dream. I know what it means to live down. I know what it means to, to be abandoned, to fight your battle. Okay? Constantly, I fight my personal battles alone. Why people think that everything is fine? And I know that many of us find ourselves where we are constantly fighting battles, where everybody around you celebrates you thinking that you are fine. Okay? And the purpose of this course is to help you live a truly powerful life, okay? And discover and define your life decisions. Take ownership of your growth and decisions, okay? It will help you cultivate useful connections that fuel your journey, build habits and structures for consistent success, and then, of course, create real, measurable transformation. So head to transformersglobal.org/e-course and register, to be a part of this session. Okay. Once again, I want to thank you guys for joining this conversation today. I'm hoping to see you guys next week. Invite someone, don't come alone, and also share this conversation if it was impactful to you, if it was helpful to you. Don't just take this alone. BB Ida says, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ayotunde. And remember, this is a live session, so you can still go ahead and share with friends. Let them listen and be part of this conversation. God bless you guys. We'll see you next week. Once again, thanks for joining. Have a great day.